Okay, so today we are going to look at the topic Yin Yang Physiology in everyday life. So as I was saying before, it's kind of like everybody knows the symbol of the yin and the yang and may have different relationships to it. We're going to look at it in more from like a physiological point of view. So this is a symbol, right? I bring this up in almost all of my classes because it's a timeless symbol, right? We see different things of it. Some people are more attracted to the light or to the dark, but we see that there's a seed in the middle of each one. Okay, the other thing that I like to notice is that it's circular, right? So even though there's two parts, there is a wholeness within that. And the way that the shapes kind of fishtail into each other suggests that there is a movement or momentum involved, right? So there's all these different things that we can collect from just an image. Okay, and this is like I said, a timeless image. So it's been used for centuries in various spiritual practices and in energetic practices. We see it in our body work, philosophy, and now I kind of want to just bring it down to the very practical level of everyday life. So for those of you who are new to Chinese medicine or yin and yang, basically the symbol, it represents balance, okay? And within that, we see the poles or the opposition, okay? So the yang side represents the white or the light. And if something is light, like let's say the sun, well, then it has heat. So there's temperature involved. So hot, the sun is hot. We see the sun up in the sky, so it's represented by the heavens. It's also the right side of the body. So the right side of the body is more our masculine side, which also represents logic and things that we know. Okay. When we're thinking about essence, it represents the energy or the chi. Okay. Which also means it's very active, right? Energy is active, it's more external in the outer world, and it has to do with the function of things. Okay, so again, the right side, and we're also thinking about expansion. Okay, so that's a long list of words, but basically everything that we see, we touch, we feel, everything in the universe can be categorized as either yin or yang. Now, what's interesting is that it's also changing. So some things can have more yin or more yang, but it can also transform into one or the next. And I'll show you some examples of that later. Okay, so if we look at the dark or the yin side, again, the temperature is more cold. And versus the sun, we see the moon and it's in the night. Okay, so if we kind of compare, everything is just the opposite. So we have darkness, cold, it's the moon, it's the earth energies, it's the left side of the body. So it's the feminine and the more emotion side. And opposed to the things that we know and we see and that are tangible, it's more about the unknown. Okay. It's represented by the blood fluid in the bodies. It's more of a passive state. It's more internal. And in this way, it represents solid or the form and contraction. Okay. So we look at things like form or function. Okay, so a great example I like to give on that is like the heart is a solid organ, right? If we took it out of the body, we can see it, we can touch it, we would have a weight to it. But when it's in the body, the function is more of the yang force, right? It beats. There's an electrical current wired up, and it has an impulse, it has movement. But if we were to take out the yin, it's like you can't really have the beat without the heart. Okay, so that's the relationship of the form and the function and the yin and the yang. Okay, another thing we might see is expansion and contraction. Okay, so take the breath, for example. When we inhale, we expand, and exhale, we contract or soften. Okay, so we can feel that in our abdomen as it expands and contracts. Okay. Um, So another example would be something that transforms. Okay, so if we look at something that's cold and solid, I might think of an ice cube. Okay, so an ice cube has a form, a density, it's cold, it has mass, right? But as it starts to warm up, it turns into liquid. Okay, so is that yin or yang? Well, in my books, it still has more yin than yang, but it's changing, right? Because the water, I can still see the water in the glass, I can still touch it and hold it. But then as it warms up more, it'll transform into steam. Okay. And then all of a sudden, you can't touch it. I can see it, but then it disappears immediately. So that's a great example how the same molecular structure can transform into something that's more yin and solid. And then over time, or with a little bit of heat, right, or movement, it can then transform into steam or yang energy. Okay. So if we think about that, in nature. And we see that in all different forms, evaporation and rain and, back into the earth. Our bodies can also move and change just like that. So everything in our body has yang on the right side, yin, inner, outer, mind, body, emotions, things like that. Okay. So that's the basic principles of yin and yang. Some might say, well, it's good versus bad, right? We see that there's the light and there's the darkness. And all throughout time, we kind of see black and white, right? And it's usually labeled as good or bad. Like if I look at this list here, oh, okay, well, the unknown, that's a known. It's scary, must be bad, right? Because yin is darkness, right? But what we want to kind of step away from is that polarity. Like it's not about good or bad or right or wrong. And this world as we know it, we kind of understand things to be in relationship to the other. So if it's not good, well, then it must be bad, right? But again, what if there was no judgment or attachment to the words good or bad or right or wrong? Everything just is, right? Just as the sphere, the earth turns and the days go, and that's just the way it is. Okay, so there's one concept. And here we go again. Now, in your experience, when I talk about the inner and outer worlds, okay, so this is where I'd like you to maybe take a little note here. How much energy would you say that we focus inwards, right, on the yin side, and how much energy are we putting outwards in the yang aspect of our own worlds? Okay, so we're looking for a number, a percentage that equals to 100, okay, because we can only have 100% capacity, which is the wholeness. So let's just kind of see where we're at, yin versus yang. Okay, everybody have a number? Okay, so when you look at that, how do you feel about that? Does it feel fair? Does it seem off balance in some way? Are there some aspects that maybe we can shift or change? So first off, the first cue is just to bring that awareness in, right? Just to kind of take a moment, self-reflect and see, okay, how am I spending my energy? And once we kind of make that awareness, then I have to ask, well, is that fair? Is that balanced? Does that create the most harmonic balance that I would like to have in my life? Okay. All right, so before we get into that, let's just go into a little breathing practice. Okay, so I like to just place the hands, one on the chest, one on the abdomen. And before we try anything, just breathe normally. Okay, so our hands are there to just kind of notice and observe the way that we breathe. And then we're going to shift our attention and we're going to breathe into our upper hand. So just expand into the chest. Exhale and inhale and exhale. Okay. All right. Take a pause there. Now we're going to shift our focus into the lower hand. So we're going to breathe in to our lower abdomen, really try and push the bottom hand away as you inhale and expand. Diaphragm drops, abdomen fills up, and then exhale just through the bottom hand. All right, so go ahead and breathe regularly or breathe in the direction that feels right for your body. And please just keep your hands on your torso. I'm just going to do a little talking. So if we connect the breath to our concepts of yin and yang, right? We said the inhale, it's like the expansion. So it's more of a yang force, right? We're active, we're inhaling. And then exhale is just emptying, or there's a little contraction maybe at the end, right? So inhale, yang, exhale, yin. Okay. So in another version of that, my inhale could actually be more yin, right? So if I'm inhaling, my diaphragm is descending, right? And the air is entering through my lungs. So just imagine your diaphragm descending from your solar plexus down to your belly button. And then as I exhale, I'm actively pushing the air out. So inhale, descends, and exhale, putting out into the world, or the yang force. So I think that's an interesting exercise, that it's the same breath. It feels different when I breathe into my upper hand only. I actually feel like a little bit higher, a little lightheaded. When I breathe into my lower hand, I feel more grounded, right? A little sleepy because I'm getting relaxed now. Okay. But if I had to just breathe normally, maybe it's a little combination. Definitely feel my upper hand more, and when I focus on, is it yin or the yang, it just has a different quality or different essence. One is bringing in, one is putting out, another version I'm expanding and I'm relaxing or contracting, another version I'm descending and then I'm putting out, I'm taking in and I'm putting out. Okay. So again, another example of how this idea or the concept of yin and yang and what they represent is always changing. Okay, so we don't actually want to be attached to what is right or wrong or good or bad, because everything just is. It's all just part of the breath, and it's part of our everyday um, activities and functions. So sorry, I see that there's a question here. When we're looking at the 50-50, the yin or the yang in everyday life, what happens if we live primarily in one of the energies, and how do we balance it? Well, that's a great question. That's what we're here to kind of explore. Okay, so ideally, what is this 50-50, right? In the symbol of perfect balance and harmony is 50% yin, 50% yang. So I have equal meditation, self-reflection, journaling, bath time, like all of these me activities. And then I go out and do my day. I interact with people, I work, and then I come back home, right? And that's like 12 hours and 12 hours in a 24-hour clock. I don't think that's really reasonable. When I look at my numbers, I'm like at 80-20, 75-25. But I feel like that's a little bit off balance. Okay, I'm just speaking personally. I would like to see for myself maybe like a 60-40. 60%, I'm still in the outer world because, that's just what I'm doing. I'm engaging with people, I'm teaching, I'm seeing clients. But like, I'd like to have a little bit more time and space and capacity to also give energy into my inner world. Okay, so when I ask this question, I ask this question all the time in all my lectures and all my classes. I like to see the gauge of people's numbers, and it usually ranges between the 70 to 90 is more focused outwards, because that's just kind of how we are entrained to function. You know, it's this idea of giving and being of service, and that makes you a good person, right? And receiving or taking too much time is almost seen as being selfish or bad or negative, right? So we're then back to these ideas of good and bad and judgment. Okay, so yes, ideally, in a perfect world, we're 50-50. But if we're not, like, what are the things that are draining our energy, right? If we're not at a balanced state, then symptoms start to occur, right? So we need to then look at and analyze, okay, well, what are my symptoms? Am I tired? Do I feel cold? Am I unmotivated? Do I have digestive issues, sleep issues? Okay, so there's a whole range of different things that we experience and that I see in my clients. And that brings us just back to patterns. And at the very, very essence of it all, it's just about balancing the yin and the yang, right? The inhale and the exhale, the left and the right, the inner and the outer. Okay, so if I come back to this image, this is these are images of balance. But look at that. Are they symmetrical? Hmm. Okay, so I really like this idea that balance is not actually a static state. So if we say, like, should we, again with the shoulds, be at 50-50? Well, like, am I always breathing in the same amount as I'm exhaling? You know, am I always doing things equally the same and steady, static, balanced, right? That's just not the reality, right? Because everything is always moving and ever changing. So in order to find balance, we need to first find our center. Okay, so when we find our center, even as things come at us, like injuries or emotions or relationships and stressors and traumas and all these things, we still have our core, we still have our balance, so that when we're thrown off our balance, we can find it back. Okay, so all of these pictures to me represent various forms of balance. Okay. And then if I look at the word homeostasis, homeostasis in essence means balance. But remember, it's the ever-changing state of equilibrium and maintenance. So the key word is maintenance. How do we maintain these ever-shifting states of balance? Okay, so all the time we have physical and chemical factors within our body, our tissues and our cells that we have to respond to, right? We don't actually think about all of these things physiologically that's happening in our body. The nervous system and the signals of the nervous system and the hormones and the endocrine, they just do it for us, right? Again, we only notice it when something is off, right? But for the most part, a healthy functioning system does this all automatically in the autonomic nervous system. Okay, so that's the inner world. Now, we also have to respond to external environmental factors. Um, so that can be, like I said, the weather, for example. When it's cold, our body has a thermostat that needs to kick in and activate, right, in order to keep us warm and to maintain that state of balance so we don't freeze to death and get frostbite, or we don't overheat either, right? When you run and you have a lot of physical activity, what happens? You start to sweat. We start to release the internal heat to again maintain balance or homeostasis. So this is always happening, whether we're aware of it or not. And the body is beautifully functioned and programmed to do that. But what happens when it's not working in its optimal manner? Well, then, yeah, we start to have symptoms. And that's really one of the key things is like we want to also pay attention to our symptoms, however subtle they are, right? The more stubborn we are, like, no, I can keep going, then the louder our symptoms need to be in order for us to start to pay attention. Okay, that's my opinion. Not my opinion, but it's what I observe. Okay. So all of these things are external environments, also internal factors. We're digesting nutrients, we're processing oxygen and carbon dioxide, and even emotions and thoughts, right? Those can change the way that we process things and can imprint the cellular matter. Okay, is everybody familiar with the science of the water? There was a study, they put like good intentions into the water and they examined it and they formed beautiful crystals. And you put like a negative thought form and it didn't quite form. So if we think that most of our body is made up of water, then for sure our thoughts and our emotions will influence the functions of our cells, our water balance, and also what I like to say, the permeability of the fluids between the tissues and cells, and our ability to adapt to both internal and external environments. Okay. So again, very, very simple concepts, but taking it into the metaphor of the yin and the yang, and also bringing it to kind of a more like practical or scientific view of how things work. So in order for homeostasis to happen within the body, we have these things called feedback systems. And feedback systems are like the plus and minus, right? The yin and the yang. If it's too much, we want to bring it down. If it's not enough, we want to uplift or energize or tonify. And this is basically what we do in body work, okay? And body, I mean body energy work. We kind of evaluate or assess what is the imbalance, what is underactive, and what's overactive. Okay, even in like a Swedish massage, that will affect the depth, the pressure, and the rhythm that I give based on the nervous system. Is it hyperactive? If somebody comes in and they're anxious and they have a lot of energy, right? I want to first meet them where they're at and like, hey, how you doing? Okay, let's go, blah, blah, blah. And then we slowly start to down regulate the nervous system. Okay, we do the same thing with breathing. So in entrainment, we like kind of sync our breaths together. And especially in shiatsu, it's so connected to rhythm and breath that after a while, like the giver and the receiver become one, right? We become that oneness as we exchange not only rhythm and breath, but pressure and leverage and things like that. And so everything again is looking in feedback systems to stimulate, activate, or sedate and relax. Okay, so again, very, very basic concepts, but we actually use them in every day and we might not even be aware of it. You know, we naturally respond to people, right? Their energies. Have you ever been around somebody who is like really low energy and you just feel heavy afterwards, you know? Or people who are really happy and uplifted and you're in a good mood after, right? So of course we're influenced by these things and they have a direct impact on our nervous system, which then will send messages to our hormones and then we'll get emotions or thoughts or feelings, and also vice versa too. So these things work in both ways. So another interesting thing that I like to look at is this idea of a cycle. So again, the Tai Chi is a circle, which is represented not only by all cycles, but specifically we can look at our 24-hour clock, right? So there's variations of light from day to night that help maintain circadian rhythms in our body. Okay, so with this symbol, you have the yin, which is the dark. At the darkest part, it's like 11, 12 a.m. and then we move into dawn, right? So there's a little bit of light starting and then the sun starts to rise. And by the time we reach midi, it's like full yang, full light, full heat. And then we start to move down into dusk as the sun sets and we're back in bed again. Okay, so if we look at this 24-hour clock, ideally our deepest sleep is like 2 a.m. Okay, so there's some people with insomnia who kind of wake up at 2 a.m. So that might be considered a symptom, right? A symptom of what? Look and find when stay longer and find out. But basically, you know, the body wants to sleep and rest and restore during the night hours. Okay, it's more of the natural rhythm. And then like 6, 7 a.m., the sun starts to rise. It's pretty much like a nice time to kind of wake up. This is when our blood pressure start to kick in and activate. Melatonin secretion stops. 10 a.m., according to this, is like we're alert, we're ready for our day. Coordination really is active around afternoon. We have quick response reaction time. Cardiovascular function is in full force. Our blood pressure is pumping, it's increasing heat and movement and activity. And then around 9 p.m., the melatonin starts to kick in and we start to feel a little bit sleepy. So ideally, we have enough energy to maintain us through the entire day, right? So in this version, it's like 6 a.m. till 9 p.m. Okay. So one of the questions that I like to ask clients is, what time do you sleep? What time do you wake up? How often? So we're looking at sleep issues, maybe insomnia, waking up frequently, mind racing, hard to sleep. But I ask, like, do you have energy to sustain your day? Like, I wake up tired. Okay, so there's a little imbalance there. Or yes, I wake up with enough energy, but I'm tired at 2 p.m., so that's not quite enough yang force to get us through the day, right? So again, simple terms, do we have enough yin to carry us through the night for a good night's rest? Do we have enough yang energy to sustain our lives throughout the daytime? Okay, so this is a circadian rhythm. In the Chinese medicine, we have something called the body clock. So again, the same 24-hour clock, but this time we're looking at it through the meridian. So I like to start here at 3 a.m. Okay, so between 3 and 5 is the energy of the lungs. Okay, so everybody's still sleeping, but people who have lung issues, either a fullness, like there's too much energy in the lungs, they might actually wake up with coughing fits between 3 and 5 a.m. Right, so somebody who says, I cough a lot, it keeps me up. I pretty much know what time, but I ask anyways, what time is that? Oh, it's between 3 and 5 a.m. Well, there you go. The lung energy is at its peak. And that's when the symptoms would show up because, right, there's an imbalance, there's too much, there's excess there. Okay, so in my day, I'm waking up at 5 a.m. Then it says, get up, we're supposed to drink warm water, maybe a little lemon. Ideally, we're getting out, we're going for a walk. So between 5 and 7 is the large intestine, and this is where we need to evacuate. So, usually people will get up, they'll go to the bathroom. Once we've emptied it out, kickstarted our digestive system a bit, then it's time to eat, right? So the stomach receives the food, it breaks it down, it digests it. And in Chinese medicine, the spleen also has a digestive function, right? So the stomach and the spleen, they work together. So the stomach receives the food and the spleen kind of works like the metabolism. So it works to support, it has the function of the pancreas. So it breaks down like the sugars and turns it into usable energy, hence metabolism, and converts nutrients into energy. Okay, so stomach, spleen, that's 7 to 11 a.m. All right, so now our stomach's full, we're metabolized, and now we get to use all this energy. So our heart kicks in and we go out. That's the cardiovascular function that we saw in the previous chart. We go out into our day, we're eating, we're socializing, small intestines, we're problem solving, we're figuring things out because we're at high alert, right? So we saw that in the circadian rhythm. By 3 p.m. and we're starting to kind of wind down a little bit, and that's usually when people are off from school, like work ends around 5, 6 o'clock. So we're starting to kind of wind down, going into dusk. We're eating dinner, we're spending time with our families, right? So the kidneys and the bladders are there to kind of like start to wind down, start to detox, eliminate, start to restore our energy for the next day. So pericardium and triple warmer. So this is our 7 to 9 p.m. So it's responsible for circulation, reproduction. They're saying this is the best time to socialize, flirt, have fun. This is a time where you want to be intimate with your partner, get a massage or do something that's, like more like, I don't know, for the body, and that will kind of make you feel good. And same thing, we're just kind of chilling out. So between 7 or let's say 9 to 11 p.m. is actually the time that we get the most restorative rest. That's the yin time. Okay, and after that, 11 p.m., we should be sleeping, helping to regenerate, and the liver, the same thing. Deep resting, dreaming, sleeping through the night. Okay. So again, a lot of times I hear people wake up between that 1 and 3 a.m. time. So if you wake up at this time, your liver could be overwhelmed by detoxing. Not only substances, it could be foods, chemicals, medications. It could also be thoughts, right? If your mind tends to kind of ruminate and go around in circles, we might either have trouble sleeping or we might wake frequently. And usually like a one type of deficiency, we see waking up between 1 and 3 a.m. So if any of this sounds familiar to you, or maybe you know people like this, for those of you seeing clients, you might have started to notice some of these patterns, then what do we do about it? Okay. So the last clock or cycle that I like to look at is more of the 30-day cycle. So a circadian cycle is 24 hours. And forgot what this one is called, but basically it follows the cycle of the moon, right? And in menstrual cycle, we see the aspects of the yin and the yang as well. Okay, so we have the menstruation. So this is where the lining is actually shed. It's the most yin time, right? This is time to be inwards and kind of reflecting and doing more self-care things. And then as the progesterone starts to rise, the lining grows, and we're full ovulation, which is in the summer time of the cycle, right? So there's a time that we want to engage and socialize and be active, right? Because it's the most yang state. And it makes sense if we're thinking about reproduction. Well, ovulation is the most fertile time. So that's the time we should be interacting with people. Okay. And then after that, the same thing. We're starting, dusk is setting. We're starting to turn more inwards. The lining thickens, and then we're back at our cycle again. Okay. So it's kind of neat because there's a lot of different images and philosophies that follow different types of cycles, and cycles are one of the key markers that I look for when determining a state of health or balance, right? So I'll ask somebody, how is their sleep? How is their digestion, right? How often do you eat? How often do you pass bowels? How is your menstrual cycle, right? Because cycles, having a nice rhythm throughout life, shows states of balance. Okay, so when there's problems with sleep, digestion, or menstruation, then there is some sort of imbalance happening, and then we're looking to kind of address those specific areas. Okay, here's another cycle. What is this? This is an annual cycle, right? So we see the year reflected in the same yin yang symbol. So what is this? Summer, because it's the most yang, right? We see the most light and heat and warmth in this time. Okay, as the days get shorter, right? The yin is starting to settle in. And what I said earlier today and my talk last week was we are in the death of winter, right? It's the most yin time. It's cold. We were hibernating. We want to contract. So things to support us through the winter would be warming things, right? Things that are gonna warm up our insides, and this can come in the forms of foods, flavors, herbs, cooking methods, even some practices like moxibustion. Okay, so winter we want to warm up, but we also want to take it easy and be slow. Why? Because it's yin, right? We see that it's the most yin time. Okay, but now we actually pass the cusp and the days are starting to get longer. Have you guys noticed that? It's 4:30 and I still see a little bit of light because we're probably about this stage right here in mid-February. Okay. And then we're going to, in a few weeks, see spring and start again. So this is an idea of a seasonal cycle. And in Chinese medicine, we look at each of these, we call these elements. We look at the meridians involved with it. We look at the foods, the flavors, the activities, the lifestyle suggestions, and each season we want to attune to and live in harmony with that particular season, right? So in the summertime, I'm probably going to be outdoors more, right? I'm going to be doing activities that, require yang energy, like swimming, running, hiking, being outdoors, right? Where in winter, again, quieter, more inward activities. Okay, so here's a long word, PNEC, psychoneuroendocrinology. Okay, now if we kind of break up the word, what does it mean? So psycho is the emotion, the feeling, and the thoughts. The neuro represents the mind or the brain function, and the endocrine is our hormonal system. So look at them put together. Our thoughts and our feelings can influence our mind, or maybe our mind thinks it first, but then that sends a signal via the pituitary and the hypothalamus axis to the hormonal system, which then the hormones actually give us the feelings or the thoughts, right? So there's this weird cycle that's going on, and who's to say like where does it start, right? The idea here is that it's actually all connected. So this is an actual study that combines psychology, neurology, biochemistry, and endocrinology. Okay. And this is what we would call in our holistic fields the mind-body connection. Okay. So again, these ideas and these practices that we kind of do naturally, well, now science is like, oh, there's a name for that. Let's look at the way these things influence each other and the relationship between them. Okay, back to that word relationship, and that it's not interconnected. Our mind is not something that lives on our head and our body is way down there, right? There's a connection. And the more we can connect these aspects, the more balanced or whole we become. Okay, so there's our brain and all the neurons shooting out from there. It's also the colors of the chakras, right? So we see that the chakras as being big neurocenters of, again, thoughts, emotions, and functions of the body. And so when we ask, like, what is this balance? It's like balancing spiritual aspects. So it doesn't necessarily, it never is equated to religion. It's really about getting connected to yourself and the source. Okay, so there's various practices that we can incorporate. Breathing is a great one, meditation, prayer, scripture, mantras, like all of these things that kind of bring in this aspect of spiritual practice. The mind, so being really active and engaging and challenging the function of the mind is also well. And of course, we have to have our embodied practices as well. And when they all come together, well, right there in the middle, we see a little glimmer of balance. Okay. And remember, things are always moving and always cycling around. So this is where we're going to kind of pause and we're going to think about an integration practice. And if you're able, I'd like to maybe stand up. If you can stand up. And we're looking at this image first. Okay, so when I stand on my feet, I have my feet hip width apart, or kind of like the base of the triangle. Okay, so our bodies represent this triangle. And I want you to really feel your feet on the ground. Okay, so this I would call our connection to the earth, right? And we see the triangle is flat, it's very grounded, full surface, and not only your feet on the ground, but your whole, I call this the pelvic bowl, right? So if you kind of think about their diaphragm, respiratory diaphragm, but your pelvic diaphragm is right below, right around the pubic bone. So this whole base is connecting into the earth. Okay, and just take that breath from your feet, from your pelvic diaphragm, and we can extend our arms up in our breath and our inhale. And exhale, bring your arms down and bringing it back into the earth. And then we're going to inhale and gather this up again. And exhale, we descend. And we'll just do this one more time. Okay, so go back to neutral, pause, and just check in, see how you're feeling. All right, don't move. Okay, next image. Oh, look at this, a reverse triangle. So here we have the yang force. The base is at the top, and then we have a narrow bottom. Okay, so in this version, put your feet together. So we're narrow on the bottom. Okay, then let's go up the center with our inhale. And then exhale, arms open and down to your sides. Okay, again, gather at the center. And one more time, inhale and exhale. Okay, you can continue that one if you like, but basically I'd like us to pause and see how you feel. Is it similar or maybe a little bit different than the first breathing, right? When we went down, this one we're going up, okay? So you should feel maybe slight differences. Maybe we have a preference, okay? Maybe we don't notice yet. And here, well, here's our integration. So we're talking about an integration practice. Okay, so I'm going to suggest now you just stand comfortably. Okay, so we're not with a wide base, but we're not totally narrow, just usually hip width apart. Your feet can still feel grounded, right, in that. And I like this one. So I'm going to bring the arms up on my inhale. And this time we're going to bring the hands down the center. Same thing. Stop at your heart. And then we're going to reverse. Inhale, go up. And exhale. Okay, let's do that one more time. Inhale, gather it up. And bring it down. And reverse up. And down. I think we need to do this 3 times. So up. And down. And up. And down. Okay, we're back to neutral. Now, without thinking, just place your hands on where you feel the energy, where you feel it buzzing in your body. Like what's activated now? Place your hands. Don't think about it, just put it. It could be your head, it could be your shoulder, it could be your torso. Where in your body do you feel the most activated after those 2 breathings? Interesting. Oh, in your hands? Okay, chest. I can't see some others. There's a shoulder. Yeah, I feel mine in my abdomen as well. Okay, the arms and hands. Okay, interesting. Again, there's no right or wrong, good or bad. We're just observing. Okay. And this idea of integration is like we're talking about centering and grounding, sometimes like based on where we are in our lives or in our day or in, various aspects of homeostasis, like we're going to feel it in different parts of our body. A lot of what we do in our body work practices and in our classes is we like to bring awareness to ourselves, right? To where we're at, not only mentally, but emotionally and physically, right? And without judging, we kind of aim to shift, right? If I'm feeling more on the left side, maybe I want to bring my focus back onto the right. And again, we do this all with a very gentle kind of encouragement, not with judgment, not with force. And it's the same way that we kind of teach our students to work within the principles of their modalities, how to engage and form relationships with their clients. Okay, so all of this is based on self-awareness principles, not only for ourselves as the practitioners, but hopefully bringing this awareness within our clients as well. I love the saying, when the wind blows, the bamboo bends, and right, and that's how we can actually learn to maintain this type of balance because we think we look at the bamboo and it's hard, it's solid, it's strong, it's sturdy, right? And that's our center, that's our core, right? We should feel that strength, our inner strength. But when the wind blows, right, when things come along, stressors, unexpected factors, we should be able to bend and go with the flow, right? Without losing your roots, without losing your center, and without losing your core. Okay, so when the wind blows, the bamboo bends. And that's it. Okay, so I'm gonna